Welcome to The Business Behind Your Business, the podcast where we delve into the financial strategies and insights that drive success for small and medium-sized business owners. I'm your host, Paul Sweeney, and in each episode we bring you expert guests who share practical advice, real-world experiences, and actionable tips to empower you on your business journey. Whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur or just starting out, get ready to uncover the secrets to success and gain valuable insights into the business behind your business. So there's a silent thief operating inside thousands of small and medium-sized businesses right now. It's not staff costs, it's not tax, it's not even the economy. It's the inefficiency. And misaligned roles, decisions, bottlenecks at the top, lack of clear execution. They're stealing up to 30% of revenue in many businesses. It makes growth hard, profit thin, and exit readiness almost impossible. So today's conversation is about closing that gap. So welcome to the Business Behind Your Business podcast. I'm Paul Sweeney, your host, and this is a show where we're going to look beyond the numbers and into the systems, the structure, and leadership decisions that determine whether a business actually works without burning out the owner. And in this episode, we're going to unpack what we call the accountability gap with Forrest Derr. Now, Forrest, he's a fractional COO and integrator who works with business owners to eliminate inefficiency, restore clarity, build teams that execute without constant oversight. So by the end of our conversation today, you will understand these things. Why the lack of accountability quietly erodes profit at scale, even in good businesses. How to create ownership and performance without micromanaging. What needs to be in place if you want a business that can grow, run, and eventually exit without depending on you. Now, this is about building a business that works as a system, not as a personality. We've often heard that the business needs to work without you. Now, our guest today, Forrest Derr, he is an operations coach with much more than just the 28 years of experience across industries like tech, SaaS, telecom, construction, landscaping. He's a guy that will deliver real results. He's also the host of the Fixers and Founders podcast, which is really exciting to hear some of the stories that he's got there. He's been helping small, mid-sized business owners regain control of their operations by creating structure, accountability, and execution discipline without the complexity. Like most of us, he's begun with a very hands-on role in retail, warehouse, rising through the levels to executive leadership, where he's led many finance, sales, and marketing teams. And today, he's sharing that knowledge, expertise, the practical systems, playbooks, and tools that remove bottlenecks, align your execution, and prepare your business for sustainable growth or eventual exit. Forrest, great to have you here with us. Welcome to the Business Behind the Business.
I appreciate the invite. That was a great intro. I don't know if I live up to all those accolades, but I'll do my best.
Well, I'm sure you do, because I've noticed, I know I won't say I've been stalking you, but I've been following you intently, seeing what you do and some of the messaging that you're putting out there, some of the tools and solutions that you're actually providing in real life, and some of the challenges that you're sharing with your clients and the experience that you've got. And, a key to understanding whether somebody is successful is how booked their calendar is. And I know that your calendar is absolutely chockers at the moment. You've got, to coin a phrase, you are oversubscribed at the moment, which is an ideal position for any business owner to be at. There is more demand for you than there is the number of Forrest Derrs in the world. So we're looking forward to hearing some of the reasons why you are so successful, but the reason you're being successful, I'm guessing, is the message that you're helping business owners with and the value that you're creating.
Yeah, one of the messaging that came from one of my clients was that I've been able to position founders to get their cell phone to stop ringing. And that was one of the greatest compliments I've gotten so far from a client, is building the structure and accountability so that cell phone of that owner stops ringing and they're not constantly having to answer questions from employees.
And I just want to clarify that with you. A lot of business owners think the key to running a successful business and being profitable is to have the phone ringing, that phone ringing from potential customers. But what we're talking about here is, as the business owner, you're not the one that's having to answer all the calls and deal with all the issues.
Yeah, so mostly what I find with founder-led businesses is that they are the ultimate stopgap and decision maker. And so all their employees are relying on them to make decisions. And so I don't want their phone to stop ringing for clients. I want big ticket clients to keep calling them. It's the employees, it's the constant interruptions where they're having to make decisions. So empowering those team members to make decisions is really where the power comes from.
Yeah, I think I had this situation with one of my clients recently. He hadn't had a holiday for a while, and I was sitting with him and his wife talking about how they can actually restructure their business, how it could be more efficient. And I said, "How's the new employee working out well?" And he says, "Yeah, it's great. It's great. He's doing really well." And his wife chipped in next to him, "Well, except for the 14 times a day that he rang you to get answers on how to do things while we were on holidays."
Yeah, and that's one of the big questions that I ask a founder when they're, trying to show the mirror, let them look in the mirror. Can you go on vacation? Can you go on holiday for a week or 2 weeks without your phone ringing? If the answer is no, then, frankly, you have a job, you don't have a business. And that can be, heartbreaking for some of these founders. But the sooner they realize that they've got a job instead of a business, that's when the real change can happen.
So if we say that the business owner wants to create a business, not a job, how do we actually take that realization and start to move them away from just being a job? I think somebody said that, if you're the first person to turn up and turn the lights on and the last person to leave, well, you're the number one employee, and that's a bad position to be in.
Yeah. Yeah, it really starts with two things. One is creating a clear and consistent vision that allows team members in the company to make decisions without having to go through a chain of command. So giving those people, those team members, an understanding of where the company's going so that the decisions that come up are easier to be made because it's clear which direction they need to go. And then the second part of it is really the accountability, setting structure in place so that everybody knows what their role is, what are the 5 to 7 things that they're responsible for, and then giving them the power to make decisions within that responsibility matrix.
Yeah, that's great. Can we I just want to unpack that a little bit more, because we're talking about accountability, and often we think accountability is that I have to answer for the actions. I have to give a detailed report of what I've done and how I've actually met my goals. But I think the way you're talking about accountability and what we're viewing as this accountability gap is so much more than just, micromanaging a checklist of this is what I've done.
Yeah, if you've truly built out accountability inside your organization, it's not micromanagement. People are measuring themselves. So part of the structure is to, again, what are the 5 to 7 responsibilities in that job description that each person is responsible for? And I find it inevitably when I ask people, what's the job description for a certain role? They'll come back with a 3-page document with 27 bullet points on it. And I'm like, can they really understand that? And can they really be accountable for all those pieces of information? So what is the 20% of things that they do that create 80% of the results? If you can simplify it down and focus in on those things, then you can really create accountability to where people can self-manage. They don't have to have somebody leading over them. Somebody can obviously coach and guide them, but instead of micromanaging, the people can manage themselves.
Yeah, that sort of brings back a horror story for me of having to create position descriptions for accountants. And I guess the standard at the time, or the industry way of looking at it, was you had to have a detailed description with ratings and metrics that they had to comply with. And when I looked at the position descriptions, they were often 12 to 15 pages. And I thought, well, how can actually anybody meet that? I love the way that you've brought that back to really the simple things. What's the 20% that contributes 80% of the work? How do we actually go and simplify that understanding?
Yeah, it definitely takes time, and it takes a discipline to focus in on what that 20% is. I find a lot of people want to create job descriptions that are almost like a CYA and develop and say, this person reports to me and they didn't do, item section 6B on page 17. But if you really get good team members, and one of the classifications I use for team members is, are they hungry, are they humble, and are they smart? And if you've got people that are hungry, humble, and smart, and you give them a clear accountability structure with, again, those 5 to 7 things, they're going to excel. They're going to excel at those things, and you don't have to micromanage and oversee them as a dictator all the time. If you don't have people that are hungry, humble, and smart and don't have clear accountability, then you end up with chaos and you end up with the founder's phone ringing.
So three key, I guess, characteristics there that you've described: hungry, humble, and smart. Can we just expand a little bit on what you actually mean by that? So one of the things that comes to mind straight away, hungry, is the graduate that's so ambitious. He's going to run over everybody just to get to the top. Is that what we mean?
No, that's not. And there's a book called The Ideal Team Player by Patrick Lencioni. So I'm not going to take credit for coming up with hungry, humble, and smart, but that book really does describe what the ideal player is. If somebody's hungry, then they're going to want to learn. They're going to want to get better. They're going to want to excel. If they're humble, then they're not going to be arrogant. They're not going to be rude. They're not going to be trampling over their neighbors. They're going to give other people credit when they need credit. And then the smart part is a little bit different. It's not smart intelligence. It's really people smart. It's emotional intelligence. If somebody is smart in how they interact with people, know how to read the room, know how to have conversations, they're going to have a much better success rate in the team world. And if you think about, a soccer team or a football team, coaches, they like really, good quality players that are skilled. But most coaches would rather have somebody hungry, humble, and smart that they could mold into the ideal player to grow that team.
Mm. So hiring the right kind of people is a big start. But I still feel that there's this gap here between what you have your employees employed to do and then what you're actually expecting them to do. How do we close that gap?
Yeah. So you got to clearly define what those responsibilities are, what those accountability responsibilities are. One of the ways that I work with teams is to actually build scorecard metrics around those activities, those things that 5 to 7 things. Everybody should have a couple of scorecard metrics. We were talking earlier about, all the different KPIs. Well, you don't need to have 20 or 30 KPIs. Just like the dashboard of your car, you need to have 3 or 4 different things that are important that tell you whether you're going off in the ditch or whether you're staying on the path to success. And so once you build that accountability structure and build those 5 to 7 responsibilities, create a scorecard that then each team member can self-report. I like to have a structure where a team member doesn't have to rely on me. If, let's say, they were reporting to me, I don't have to tell them if they had a good week last week. I can, and I should tell them if they had a good week, but individuals should be able to know whether they had a good week based off of that scorecard.
So I think what you're saying, and if I'm hearing this correctly, is that when you deliver or when you create those scorecards, those, I guess, measurements of how successful they were in actually performing their work or achieving the outcomes, it's easy to understand, and it's something that they can see. They can see what the score is. They don't need to be told or wait for some magic formula and magic figure to suddenly appear 6 weeks later where they get berated for not achieving it. It's very obvious to everybody what the scorecard is and what moves the score forward.
Yeah, so you can even take it down to the field level. So one of the companies I worked for was a landscaping company, and my foreman on the truck that then had a helper, they would go out and literally mow grass, like mow weedy edge grass. We created metrics around them, really one metric called SPH, and it was sales per hour. And they needed to produce $43 per man hour to be effective. If they produced $50 per man hour, I was cheering them on. If they were producing $30 per man hour, I was not very happy with them. But at the same time, I didn't want them to produce $85 per man hour because that means that they were skipping steps and not doing a good job. So we created a range, and they could calculate it. At the end of the week, they would look how many hours they worked, what was the dollar value of those yards that they were cutting, and they would self-report on a dry erase board in the back of the building with everybody to see. My SPH was $42.50. Thumbs up. So empowering even field team members to be able to analyze and assess whether they had a good week, that's where you can really get accountability.
So you've created I guess, a process where every team member knows how the score is calculated, what it relates to, but more importantly, what the outcomes are that they're producing, and they can self-report on that. So that reduces, I guess, the need to be told what you're doing well, what you're doing wrong. You're understanding that. How do you get to that position really where everybody knows what they need to do to get the high performance, to get the best outcomes, without having to be told or given, I guess, detailed instructions?
Yeah, well, you definitely have to have training. So if you have somebody that's coming in new to the company that's never sat in that seat before, you need to clearly define those 5 to 7 things that they need to focus on, give them that scorecard metric, but then mentor them into that role. And so that may be, a lead technician out there in the field working with a helper, grooming that helper into the next lead technician. And so they learn that process, learn, the skills needed, as well as the optimized way to work to get the most efficiency on that truck. And so it's definitely a learned behavior, and it's a coaching process to get those people to grow into that role.
Training and coaching is often one of those areas that a lot of businesses skip through. I think they expect that somebody will come and know how you do things instantly, that just because they've worked in another similar business, that they'll be able to jump into your role and run straight away perfectly how you want. But we often skip that training process.
100%. I mean, I worked at a company, it was a telecom company, for a number of years. And one of the things that we initially started doing was going and trying to hire other telecom employees from other companies. And we figured, hey, they know telecom, we're telecom, this should be easy, give them the manual and go to town. And what we found is that those people typically failed at a high rate because they came from another company and had bad habits. We had a much higher success rate pulling somebody from a totally different industry and coaching them into the role and teaching them how we would do it. And you're right. I see it so many times. People are like, oh, you're an AC tech? Well, here's a truck. Here's your tools. Go see the customers, and here's the manual. It doesn't work. You've got to coach those people into your proven process on how you do things.
So you've got one of the things we're sort of moving a little bit, I won't say sideways, but really looking at building that whole process and environment is talking about processes and the way that we do things here.
Yep.
How important is it to actually make sure everybody's on the right page and understands what the process is?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think of it in a couple different ways. One, you have core processes where this is, again, going back to the 20/80, the 20% of things that get the 80% of the results. Those are your core processes. Those are the things that everybody should understand how we do the high level things. Then you have procedures below that. So you obviously can have some different detailed procedures for the finance team versus the sales team versus the operations team. But it's vitally important that the company, the leadership team that's driving the organization, know what those core processes are, and they're clearly defined. And clearly defined is not, again, a 27-page document. It's maybe a 5-page document with these are the 10 steps of each section, and this is what we do. And so many companies, again, skip that. They go straight to the SOP that's 37 pages rather than saying, let's back up and look at who we are and what we do. The companies that are successful have already done that. The Chick-fil-A's of the world, the major, successful franchises, they've created that core process.
So we started the conversation talking about or raising this issue of what we call the accountability gap. And
yeah.
I guess most businesses will think straight away that accountability is like that micromanaging checklist. Have you done 17 pages worth of compliance, or did you skip a few steps? What you've described is a different way of accountability, and I would say self-accountability by building understanding of the core processes,
yep.
the 20%, having the extra standard operating procedures in place, so the SOPs, making sure that we don't skip the training, but understanding how the culture is. And then, at no stage of that have we actually mentioned that, and check every decision with the business owner.
That's correct. Because you shouldn't be checking everything with the decision owner, the business owner. That's where, if you cast a clear vision, you create clear accountability, clear roles and responsibilities, and then create clear core processes. The owner should be able to work on the business instead of in the business. And so many times these founders, they are just stuck. Like you said, they're the first person that turns on the lights or the last person to turn the lights off, and they're really stuck in the business. And it's not a sustainable model to scale that business if you can't get out of that mindset as a founder.
You've been successfully helping business owners implement this change to adopt these kind of, I guess, focusing on the 20% that matters. What kind of impact does it have when you actually start that process of working with a business to transform from a highly micromanaged, owner-dependent business to the kind of business we've just described, where it's self-accountability, you understand the core things that you need to do, you understand the processes, you know how to measure your success. What kinds of process and outcomes are we seeing? Because you're obviously very busy doing this. There's a lot of demand for it. So people are seeing that this needs to happen. What kind of impact are we looking at?
There's a couple of things. One thing is that people leave the company when there is clear accountability. And so one of the things I warn everybody that I work with, I said, you are going to have people leave this company once we set out on this journey and create clear accountability, create clear scorecards and clear processes. People that are not good team players they love ambiguity. They like to be able to skirt around processes and procedures. They like to be able to hide in the corner when they need to. But this really shines a light on everything in the business. So first thing is that I end up seeing people leave. People will leave the business, but they're the people that you really want to leave. They may have been the foundation for the business. They might have been the second employee, but they're not going to help that founder get to the next level. So that's the first thing I see. And then the second thing I see is the founder getting freed up to start thinking about how to scale that business. And again, getting them to have the ability to take a week off. And if they wanted to take a sabbatical for a month, I saw this firsthand with the company that I started working in, where I first found this foundation and started, building the systems. It was during COVID. And so we were about 2 years into the process and COVID happened, and the founder of the company got COVID and ended up in ICU, ended up in the hospital for a month, and then was offline for another 60 days after that. The business continued to function. It operated like he wasn't even a part of the business. And that wasn't an insult to him. It was actually a great thing because we had positioned the business to where he did not need to be in the day-to-day. And that's the other thing that I see. The founder's phone stops ringing from employees, and they can actually think on the business and figure out how to continue to scale.
So we're coming back to, one of the measurements of success when you've implemented is that as the business owner, the founder, your phone will stop ringing from employees and only the conversations you need to have. And it might not even be the sales conversations, because if you've got your sales team employed correctly, you're not even going to be involved in that. There's one key thing you mentioned when we're talking about people leaving. There's often, when I talking to business owners, they're fearful about one of their foundation employees leaving and taking away a lot of knowledge. But I'm suspecting you're actually saying, well, hang on, that could actually be a good thing for your business if they do leave.
Yeah. There's a book called Who's Your Mike that I actually hand out to a lot of people that I work with. And Who's Your Mike is written, I think it's Kurt Wilkins that wrote it. And the book explains that on an entrepreneur's journey, on a founder's journey, you're going to meet all these people and you're going to meet a Mike. And there's a Mike out there that helped you start the business, and maybe they were your second or third employee and they've been with you from the beginning. Great, appreciate the loyalty, and it's wonderful that they've been there. But at some point, your business is going to reach an inflection point where that Mike is not going to help you get to the next level. And you have to, as a founder, make hard decisions and say, is if Mike's not my guy, then I need to go find somebody else, and I need to either find a position that they can be successful in inside the organization, or they may just need to exit the business. But unfortunately, when you're a founder and you're just getting started, you will take anybody that's breathing and has a pulse to work with you. And that's just part of the process. It just has to happen that way. But if you've got a founder that's aggressive and wants to scale, they're going to have to do some pruning in the business to get it to grow where it needs to grow.
Some really powerful points that you've shared with us there, Forrest. Look, I'm going to struggle to summarize all of them. So, you have to go back and re-listen and take notes as you go. Make sure you're not driving while you're taking notes. But there's some really key points there. And I think it's a really, if you, as a business owner listening to this conversation, one of the things I really encourage people to do is put aside your preconceptions and your beliefs and listen to the points that Forrest has made, because there is a change that's necessary to move your business forward to that point where you have that freedom, where your phone doesn't ring, but you've got a successful, profitable, efficient business and growing. And that transition from, as you mentioned, Forrest, when you start, you take any employee with a pulse that can do the physical work for you, or the work that needs to be done, to actually designing the business that you want and moving forward. And you're going to have to replace and change the components, change some of the employees along the way. I guess that really unlocks a new way of thinking. And I guess as a stressed business owner looking at your business where you're dealing with the phone calls, 24 hours a day, and that's what often happens for a small business owner, you've got to make that change and start thinking about, how can I empower my team? How can I give them that self-accountability that we've been talking about? And so that they know that the core things that they need to do, and I'm not having to be there constantly answering questions, checking things, making sure things are happening. So I've been really excited by this conversation. I know it works because, as we mentioned at the beginning, Forrest, you are oversubscribed. You've got so much demand for your service. It also means to me that a lot of business owners are realizing that the traditional ways that we've been creating businesses are not working, and we need to make change. Forrest, I just want to touch on the podcast. You've got Founders and Fixers, or Fixers and Founders, sorry. What kind of conversations can we hear if our listeners want to come and come across and listen to the Fixers and Founders podcast?
Yeah, the conversations on Fixers and Founders, we are interviewing founders of businesses that are scaling their businesses, but we're also interviewing the fixers. I'm classified in the fixer side. I'm not really a founder of business. I like to go in and help fix those businesses. So fixers could be fractional CFOs, CMOs, COOs, those people that come in and help those founders scale those business. So it's been a great conversation starter, and we have a short format like yours, so it's about 15 to 20 minutes and just short bits, and it's good.
Fantastic. So exciting stuff. Great podcast to go and listen to. You'll hear a lot more of the content like what you've heard today, with some great tips, really powerful tools, ideas to move your business from the point where you're stuck in it, you're answering the phone 24 hours a day, you're not moving forward, to a business that gives you that freedom. Forrest, your contact details, we'll put those in the show notes and on the businessbehindyourbusiness.com website so that people can get in touch with you. They might have to join a waiting list for your services because you're doing such a great job with so many businesses at the moment. And also a link to the Fixers and Founders podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you with us today, and we're really appreciative of some of the wisdom you've shared with us.
Man, thank you for the invite. It's a great conversation.
That's a wrap for this episode of The Business Behind Your Business. We hope you found today's discussion insightful and valuable for your business journey. Before we go, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favourite platform. Share it with fellow business owners who could benefit, and send in your burning questions because we love hearing from you. Missed any of our previous episodes or looking for additional resources to help grow your business? Head over to our website at thebusinessbehindyourbusiness.com. There you'll find our full archive of past episodes, along with show notes, transcripts, and links to valuable resources mentioned in each episode. Your journey to business success continues at thebusinessbehindyourbusiness.com. Until next time, stay inspired, stay informed, and keep building the business of your dreams.